Welcome to Varsity Blue. Alex Prasad, Adam Brewster, David Nows here to break down Michigan's big win against Indiana.
Too close.
Small win, too close win.
Close.
I don't know if I'd call it a big win. I would say maybe as expected, if not a little disappointing.
It would have been a big loss had it been a loss. Regardless, Michigan 5-0, their best record at this point in the season in my 4 years, as a matter of fact.
Since
The realization
06.
I had just now. But Adam Brewster, why don't you take us through the blow-by-blow of this too interesting game?
Very interesting. Michigan making the 5-hour trip down I-69 to Bloomington, Indiana. There we go. Pam Ward with the call on the day, and Ben Chappel starts things off for the Hoosiers, hitting Deuce Wilson, capping off a 77-yard drive. Michigan down 7-0 early, but Indiana defense meet our quarterback, Denard Robinson. Second play from scrimmage. Robinson goes 72 yards. First player in history to have 2 games in a career with over 200 yards passing and rushing, and more Robinson right here with this 27-yard rush. Gets brought down a little funny, loses the ball. No worries here, as just a couple plays later, he hits Roy Roundtree out in the flats, and Roundtree jukes around an Indiana defender and just basically walks into the end zone. Michigan ties the game, goes up 14-7 right there. Robinson and Roundtree would hook up again on the next drive, a 74-yarder. That was that play action that you saw against Notre Dame. A little reminiscent of Illinois right here as Roy Roundtree gets brought down at the 2-yard line this time. And you know what, we loved his touchdown so much, we're going to show it again. David Nows talk about it a little bit.
Roy Roundtree showing off some of his agility, not necessarily breakaway speed, but the Indiana defender takes a bad angle, and you see a touchdown.
Back to that Michigan, Roundtree got brought down to the 2. A bad snap exchange, Denard Robinson fumbled. Indiana would recover, so it is just looking like that Illinois game. Very happy about that fumble recovery, and they would go 99 yards capped off on this 22-yard run by Darius Willis, game tied at 14. One of a few good plays by the defense coming up right here as Ben Chappel rolls out to the right and is looking for a man in the end zone, but Cam Gordon gets in the way and will take this interception. Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking. Don't drop it. Takes it out to the 20-yard line. And Michigan would take full advantage off this turnover. Denard Robinson, more big plays right here. A 28-yard run gets brought down inside the Indiana 10-yard line. And 3 plays later, he will do it through the air, rolls out to his right, and finds Kevin Koger, who will just go in off the corner out there. Michigan up 21-14. Last Indiana drive of the half coming up, and they're moving the ball well. Tandon Doss had a 24-yard catch here. Doss had 221 yards receiving on the day, made James Rogers look like he had never played a game of cornerback in his life. And just a few plays later, time expired at the end of the half. Chappell hits DeMarlo Belcher to tie the game at 21 going into halftime. Michigan, though, would come out firing on all cylinders as Robinson hits Junior Hemingway coming across the middle, and in a very slow 50 yards, Junior Hemingway does manage to find his way into the end zone. 50 seconds into the second half, Michigan regains the lead up 28-21.
He turned his head like 15 times.
Later in the quarter, more Doss on this 46-yard catch. A great throw by Chappell. Cam Gordon with a touchdown-saving tackle. Unfortunately, this set up Darius Willis' second touchdown of the day with a 4-yard scamper right here. Scoring came to a standstill for a while, and you will see my favorite play on the defensive side of the ball coming up right here as Mike Martin picks up Ben Chappell and drops the hammer, throws him down on his head. I love Mike Martin a lot. Just over a minute left right now with time winding down. Hoosiers facing 4th down, trailed by 7. Chappell hits Darius Willis, tie ball game, 35-35. Just over a minute left for the Michigan offense to move the ball, and Denard Robinson takes over from here. A 17-yard run. Michigan choosing to run the ball in the 2-minute drill, but they will do it through the air right here as Robinson, a beautiful pass to Junior Hemingway down in the corner, puts Michigan on the 4-yard line with just over 20 seconds to go into the game. And the next play, Robinson does the rest himself. A 4-yard run to put the Wolverines up by 7, his second touchdown run of the day. The last chance for the Hoosiers. Ben Chappell with all sorts of time throws up a prayer for Tandon Doss, Michigan's secondary, all over it. Tipped up and eventually knocked down by James Rogers. and the Michigan team breathes a sigh of relief. Craig Rowe will go nuts right here. He is very happy about that win. Michigan escaped for the 42-35 win in Bloomington, barely avoiding their first loss to the Hoosiers at Indiana.
It seems like it's been the blueprint for every game, and let's take a look at the stats, the full game stats of this game, guys. But the biggest storyline, once again, Denard Robinson. He again appears unstoppable. By the way, that talking point has not changed the entire year so far. Defense especially struggling on third down, of course. 5-0 overall, 1-0 in the Big Ten, undefeated 5 games into the season. Let's start with Denard, David. Is there anything you can say? 494 total yards, 3 top individual total yard performances in Michigan football history. Only player in history to have over 200 yards passing and rushing twice in a career. Where does the praise end?
There's nothing to say other than the fact that Denard Robinson is absolutely dominant, and he's been a dominant football player for this team the entire season. 277 passing, 217 on the ground, and 5 total touchdowns. If you do that against any team, it's impressive. If you do that against a Big Ten opponent, it's very, very impressive. If you do it for almost 5 straight weeks, excluding that Bowling Green game where he kind of struggled and got injured early and didn't come back in, I mean, that's very, very impressive. And Denard Robinson had a great year so far. If he keeps it up, this Michigan team's going to go a lot further than people thought they were.
And we saw a lot of running between the tackles, Adam, mostly with Denard, who had 19 carries, but Ben Smith also 8 carries, 80-some yards. Bringing Kevin Koger and Martell Webb into the backfield more with a heavy set, even though you're running out of shotgun in that scenario, it's working well, and it's a heavy set. It's almost a power eye.
It's almost a power eye, a little bit offset, but what that heavy set does is it gives Michigan some serious size in the backfield, 2 tight ends, and they've done a great job blocking. On that 72-yard run by Denard, Kevin Koger and Vincent Smith, the little Vincent Smith, was down there and threw a key block that allowed Denard to escape and go for all 72 yards. A little bit worrisome, only 80 yards from Vincent Smith, and he was the only back, Alex. It was interesting that we saw featured, obviously, Michael Shaw down, and we had seen split time before, but with no Shaw, it was all Vincent Smith.
That was pretty interesting, but of course, the big glaring weakness, and we're going to be breaking these plays down in just a second from more of an X's and O's standpoint, but the defense, David, the defense. Ben Chappel dropped back to pass 64 times, more over 60 times, sacked thrice. I mean, that's no pressure on him, and the secondary wasn't doing anything to cover those receivers either.
Well, anytime a team has 98 plays, possesses the ball for 42 minutes, you know your defense didn't perform very well. Now, the Michigan passing defense gave up 480 yards. Conversely, the Michigan rushing defense held them under 100 on 34 rushes. So you have to think that Michigan rush defense is starting to look a lot better, especially coming up against Michigan State this next week. That does bode well for them. However, the passing defense, look, it's going to be bad, but at the same time, containing rather than worrying about stopping the other team will be key for Michigan. Holding them under 300 yards instead of giving up these 500-yard games would be big.
I mean, it's obviously Michigan playing more conservatively, remembering 3rd and 26s converted against Iowa last year and whatnot, and safeties being burned. But isn't it just more painful? It's just death by 1,000 paper cuts.
It's avoiding the 99-yard pass, but still allowing the 99-yard drive.
Right.
You know, Indiana did that with 5 yards, 6 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards. Nothing huge, but just chipping away slowly. And the bubble screen Indiana ran was very effective, and Michigan State was taking notes at how soft the coverage was. It'll be interesting to see if Michigan adjusts to that next week to eliminate the bubble screen, because Keyshawn Martin is a very fast wide receiver, and that could be potentially dangerous.
And that was really what killed Michigan last year against Michigan State. They ran that little bubble over and over and over to Keyshawn Martin and Blair White as well, and they got at least half of their passing yards through that bubble screen. But we've talked a little bit about what happened in this past game, but we're going to toss it now to Rachel Segal, who's going to break down in X's and O's exactly how Michigan had breakdowns on defense and how Denard Robinson got sprung for some of his big runs.
Thanks, Alex. I'll start by examining exactly what went wrong with our defense on Saturday. With Indiana lining up 3 receivers in a bunch formation on the right side, of course the defense's initial expectation is that the play will go to that side. However, you can see here, as we roll the tape, that the solo receiver on the short side of the field takes his defender towards the center, opening up space for the running back, Darius Willis, out of the backfield. Oftentimes, Indiana used this misdirection to confuse Michigan's defense and keep them on their heels. As a result, Michigan played an extremely relaxed coverage against Indiana all day, and the poor tackling did not help the situation. Now let's take a look at some of Denard's highlights from the game, because who doesn't want to watch this kid run? On Michigan's second offensive play of the game, Denard is well protected by Martell Webb at the top and Vince Smith at the late block at the bottom of the screen. Webb is a tight end and usually doesn't line up in the backfield, but they've been bringing him into the backfield to block more and more since it seems to be working out really well, as you can see on this play. Denard then shows off his superhuman speed, running for 72 yards, and once he's in the open field, nobody can catch him. Just one play later, the two guys in the front of Denard are both tight ends. With Vince Smith motioning away from the play, Kevin Koger joins Martell Webb in the backfield. You can see here that Webb makes quite a statement by pummeling the Indiana linebacker into the turf, as Denard makes a run for it. We've seen Denard use his feet to scare defense. On this play, watch how the safety gets sucked in as Denard pretends that he's gonna run, but instead throws a wide pass to Roy Roundtree. This is the exact same play that Michigan used 3 weeks ago against Notre Dame, with Roy Roundtree on the receiving end yet again. In both instances, Denard's dual threat really confuses the safeties, and as a result, Michigan gets an easy, big gain to Roy Roundtree. Alex, Adam, and David will be back after this commercial break to wrap up the Big Ten this week.
Welcome back to Varsity Blue. Alex, Prasad, Adam Brewster, David Nows. That was Rachel Segal and Lauren Winfrey coming up. But take a look at the top 25. Some very interesting games this past week, guys. Florida, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Stanford, Oregon, and it caused some mix-up in the top 25 standings if we do get a chance to take a look at those. But Oregon leaps Boise State into that number 3 spot with their big win against Stanford. Big come from behind win against Stanford. Boise State, TCU round up the top 5. Ohio State solid in that number 2 spot. They did lose a couple votes actually with their struggles against Illinois. I'm going to listen to their voting, which is confusing myself as well. Forget about it. But let's start with the Big Ten guys. We'll take a look at the top 25 a little bit later, but you can see Ohio State did lose some. Michigan State jumps up with their big win. Let's start with Michigan State, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, heavy favorite, highly hyped going into this year. In Chicago, when we had Big Ten media days, John Clay is going to run over everybody and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. Well, John Clay had a decent game against Michigan State, David, but still, Michigan State came out on top.
Well, John Clay didn't get a whole heck of a lot of carries. He only carried the ball 17 times, ran for 80 yards. So, that's not very impressive from someone who's supposed to be an all-world type back. Also, Wisconsin only passes for 127 yards against that Michigan State secondary that's supposed to be absolutely atrocious. The student section has to pass every time that there's a pass play in East Lansing. So, you have to expect more of your quarterback and your passing game than 127 yards. Michigan State played a pretty all-around solid game. I don't want to jump ship on Wisconsin, my Big Ten pick, quite yet, but Saturday did not make it look very good.
Isn't it true, Adam, that Wisconsin and Iowa are the same team? And every year that Wisconsin or Iowa is supposed to be good, they're not. And every year they're not supposed to be good, they are. Is that just a fact? Can't we just
It's a fact.
know that?
They're corn-fed farm boys.
Right.
It's unbelievable. It's that running game from Ohio State. I gotta say, I wasn't able to see the game. I was at the Michigan-Indiana game, but Wisconsin got away from their running game, and that's their bread and butter. That's how they win games. John Clay only got 17 carries, and you want to see him getting 30, 35 carries for Wisconsin to win. And I got to say, I was surprised by the result.